Yes, it is rapid fire time as we start hour number 2 of the show. I'm Sean Stiers. Jesse Stiers is with me, and we have plenty of topics to get into. If I can cue up my screen here in the right place and find where to start talking. Here is what Marcus Freeman said this week about Jeremiyah Love's 23 carry workload against Texas A&M last week.
We were intentional about wanting to put the ball in his hands. So much of that is determined, one, by play calling, but two, by the amount of plays that you have as an offense. And what you saw is we were able to have some longer play drives. And with more plays, it's more opportunities to get the ball in his hands. And he did a great job, and he always does when you get the ball in his hands.
All right, Jesse. So what did you think about Jeremiyah Love's dramatically increased workload last week? You're talking, but nothing is coming out. There it is. Go ahead.
I think that there was a clear and obvious push to get him the ball as much as possible. But I think what Marcus Freeman said really holds a lot of value is I don't think it's necessarily, a certain number. I think it's more or less one in every 4 plays, we want Jeremiyah Love to touch the ball. And the more that the game goes on or the more drives that you have that last long, that number is just going to continue to increase at the end of the day. So I think it's they want him to have 25% of the workload offensively. And as the game goes on, that number is going to only do anything but increase when you're scoring a lot, having long drives that go down the field. So, it makes perfect sense. We saw him catch a one-handed pass out of the backfield and take it in for a touchdown. There's so many ways he could be utilized. We saw him. And, honestly, to kind of reinforce what we were just talking about, I think the Wildcat has a big part of that as well, why the snap count was up. When you have a package where that is largely, I know Price took took a couple, but I think that, the introduction of this Wildcat package adds more to that snap share as possible.
Yeah, that's very true. If they're going to do more of that, then that's naturally going to increase his carries there. That's a really good point. I hadn't, really even factored that into it. But you're looking at 27 total touches. And look, after week 1 and he's only carrying the ball 10 times, we're all talking about it, and he's got to touch the ball more. He got the ball more. He averaged around 4 yards per carry. He had 4 more catches for 53 yards. So, that's – and then, like you said, when you factor in the Wildcat, that's kind of the workload that I think that you expect out of a number 1 type guy. Now, as Josh says, Price was the hotter hand. Probably so. At least at times he was, because I think that still, the thing, and we talked about this earlier in the week with Love, is he's just got to be a little more patient. He was rushing a little bit, getting over his skis, coming downhill. Just be a little bit more patient. Wait for that hole to get there, and he's got a chance to break it. It felt like he wanted everything to go 80 yards every time that he touched the ball. And maybe with, for good reason, after the fact that he was limited to 10 carries against Miami in the opener. But I do think that 23, I'm not complaining, because, the way we talked about 10 carries after the first game, I think 23 might be on the high end, but, even if you're talking about 18-ish carries and then 4 or 5 more receptions, I think that that's a really good workload, because you do still have to figure out how you're balancing this with Jadarian Price, because I think that there is still a more prominent role for Jadarian Price as well.
Yeah, and again, I just think that this Wildcat formation really added a lot to the workload, and maybe that was just game plan dependent. I don't think we're going to see that much Wildcat every single week, and I think it's something that they want to use situationally, and it really shouldn't come up against Purdue. You should be able to dominate them outside of having to run the Wildcat formation. But I also agree that if we're not going to see Aeneas Williams, then this needs to be more, split between Jadarian Price. And I'll still say this, whether or not Notre Dame was 0-2 and 2-0, this is the best running back duo in the country. And yes, you want Jeremiyah Love to have a lot of touches, but you also want Jadarian Price to get touches too, because
Yes.
I mean, just look at the way he ran the ball against Texas A&M. I thought he was fantastic, to be honest with you. He just runs so angry all the time, so north and south, and just really a lot of explosion that comes out of, kind of that bigger, stockier looking body of his.
Yeah, it's like going back to when that team that we loved so much had Marion Barber and Julius Jones in the backfield. You remember when Barber would come in and he was just like the more physically, like that angry runner that you're talking about. There's definitely, and I'm not saying that Love isn't, but there's definitely more of that with Price.
And I'm a little bit surprised that, that there wasn't more maybe of a concerted effort to use Price in the Wildcat compared to Love because of that reason. I think he's a little bit more of a bowling ball and he can get downhill north-south and really put his shoulder into someone. So, just the more we talk about it, I have more and more kind of pet peeves. I don't mind the idea of the Wildcat. It's just the way that it was executed and drawn
Be
up
more
on
creative.
Saturday.
Be more creative. Like cause more, make the defense have to think a little bit more.
Yeah, and get more north and south with Jadarian Price and Jeremiyah Love.
Yep, for sure. So scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence that Love ends up rushing for over 1,000 yards this season?
I'm going to go a solid 8 out of 10. I think there's definitely a concerted effort to have, to get him more workload this season. You have 12 regular season. I think he does this in the regular season, to be honest with you. I don't even think he would need a potential, bowl game or playoff if Notre Dame makes it to that point. I think he gets this done in the regular season. I'm willing to go 8 out of 10.
I'm 8 out of 10 as well. I'm very confident. Slow start, but obviously picked it up last week. And again, what he's going to see the rest of the way isn't going to be what he's seen these first 2 weeks. I fully expect he's going to have Jeremiyah Love is going to have like 150, 160 yard game on, maybe 12 to 15 carries, something like that, where he's going to break 2 or 3 runs pretty long. And all of a sudden the numbers are going to kind of start to add up like a video game. And the next thing you know, he's going to be over 1,000 yards this season. So I do think that I'm pretty confident he's going to get there again. I give it an 8. I am Tenzin. I'm the son of Ang, getting very angsty here. Marcus Freeman suppressing the creativity of the offense. He says either that's sarcasm or he just wants to blame Marcus Freeman for everything because he's disgruntled at this point. So I don't know which it is. By the way, Beefeater Jesse, with a little question there for you. Wedding in 2 weeks? What is it?
2 weeks.
17, 16 days away, something like that at this point?
Yeah. Yep. 2 Saturdays from this Saturday.
It's getting here. Fill in the blank. It's blank that when asked about how Tyler Buchner juggles his time between being the special teams holder and being the number 3 quarterback, Irish quarterback coach Gino Guidugli said, quote, his primary focus is being the holder. You know what I mean? Like there's not a whole lot of reps that go to the number 3 quarterback, end quote.
It's even more frustrating because if that's the case, then he should never drop an extra point ever. If you're telling me his main priority on this team is to be a special teams, guru, or I don't even know what the word you would use, but
special team specialist.
Yeah. Then it's so infuriating and even more inexcusable that he drops that ball. He should be taking 100 reps off the jug machine or something every day, focusing on just catching the ball. So I don't know. I don't like hearing that because it just draws more attention to the fact that he dropped the ball on that extra point.
He had his Romo moment for sure. I kind of looked at it in a different way. I looked at this as there are a lot of people who continue to still live under the guise that somehow Tyler Buchner is going to be an actual factor in the offense, like he might ever take real snaps at quarterback. But, Gino Guidugli is saying his primary focus is being the holder. To your point, you should never drop a snap if that is your primary focus. If that's the main thing that you're working on, there's not a whole lot of reps that go to the number 3 quarterback. He is there as an emergency quarterback is what he is, because he does have more experience than Herbert and, the rest of the guys out there. That's why he is the number 3 quarterback. He's not there because he is actually working the offense. So it is, on the one hand, frustrating, makes it even more frustrating that he did drop, a snap that was right to him, and it looked like it just hit off the heel of his hand. And at the same time, it's like, this is not a guy who is actually going to be some kind of factor in the offense. Maybe he's a factor in a fake or something else like we saw last year, but that's going to be the extent of it. You're not going to get a whole lot of trust, by the way, to be a guy who is counted on to execute a fake when you drop easy snaps like that. Fill in the blank. It's blank that KK Smith caught his first pass before Jaden Greathouse.
Shocking. It's absolutely shocking. And, I hate to be, everyone was on the Greathouse train after the last couple of games last season. And, I always felt like I was the guy like, well, let's kind of see it carry over into this next season. And it's like, well, you got CJ Carr. You should be able to, catch the ball better. Notre Dame has just become a wide receiver by committee. I don't think that their offense is designed in a way that they have a true wide receiver that they're trying to funnel the ball to. It's just whoever happens to be out there. You know what I mean? So it's really shocking.
You've just muted yourself again. I don't know how you managed to do that. Click it. There you go.
My connection got there. For someone who has as much skill as Jaden Greathouse, and knowing how much better CJ Carr is in the passing game this year, I would say, again, it's shocking, but it's honestly unacceptable. Like, you have to find a way to get him the ball, because he is probably your most dynamic.
And, Vince and I were talking about this yesterday, and I agree with what you're saying. Doesn't it feel like, especially when you look at the fact that the top 2 receivers right now, top 2 pass catchers, Eli Raridon, 9 for 182 through 2 games. Obviously, a big chunk of that came on the 65-yard catch and run against Miami, but he had another long one last week as well. Malachi Fields, 8 for 125, and then it goes Jeremiyah Love, 8 for 79, Jordan Faison, 7 for 50. But when you look at Raridon, when you look at Fields and Faison, those 3 guys specifically, not counting the running back, like, most of what they're doing is out on the perimeters. Doesn't it feel like, and again, both Greathouse and Pauling are slot receivers. Doesn't it feel like they are avoiding all that
the middle of the field
congestion in the middle of the field? And, especially when you have a big target like either Raridon or Fields. Obviously, Faison's not that big, but he's an outside receiver. Doesn't it feel like that's kind of what they're doing right now with CJ Carr? Like, they're avoiding that center of the field as much as possible?
Oh, 100%. And I think that does nothing but, be a disservice to Pauling, to Greathouse, or whoever's in the slot. Like, you can't be a slot wide receiver and not work the middle of the field.
Yeah.
So, maybe that development comes as we get into the season and CJ Carr gets more confident. Or honestly, I don't think CJ Carr is not confident. I think the coaching staff is just a little worrisome of what could happen if you go over the middle of the field. But you're 0-2 at this point. So, like, what is there to lose? Like, obviously there's a lot to lose, but I think that there should be less reservation than there was 2 games ago. I guess what I'm trying to get at.
I agree. Well, Jesse, I was looking at the over-under Notre Dame-Purdue. It actually started out like within the last hour, it was 52.5. It has dropped. The over-under has dropped to 51.5 as we've been doing the show here.
Really?
Yeah.
51.5?
51.5. Notre Dame is favored by 25.5. They've got the line. They've got the over-under at 51.5. That seems incredibly low to me.
Yeah, I mean, especially Notre Dame has put up almost 40 points against A&M and 20-something versus Miami.
They're averaging over 30, but they're also giving up around 30 per game.
Right. So what that shows to me is they think the defense really is going to stagger Purdue.
I guess so.
But, I mean, I don't think any of us are buying that.
I don't, and until we see it, I don't think any of us are believing it. So, yeah, I thought that was interesting that the line actually, I mean, obviously that means you've got, action moving on that, but 51.5 right now for the over-under Notre Dame-Purdue Saturday. Very interesting. There was a question. Okay, there were a couple. Bobby in the YouTube chat says, is Jesse doing a whiteboard version of his wedding vows? Bobby is all over you. Is that can you confirm or deny whiteboard version of the wedding vows coming?
That is a big deny.
Oh, you don't think Naomi would be up for that whiteboard up at the front on the altar?
I haven't even written mine yet.
Joseph asks, should Notre Dame's defense continue to falter? What is the shelf life for Chris Ash? Also, what is next? Promote Makins or look outside in the offseason.
It's hard to say. I don't think Marcus Freeman is just going to can a guy in season. I think he's going to, as much as it pains me to say, not even pains because we're only 2 games into this sucker, but there's no way that Chris Ash doesn't make it till the end of the season.
Yeah, I don't think, even if we continue to see the kind of things happening that are happening right now, I don't think he is ejected. I don't think that he is fired from the staff. I think he would basically stay on staff. They would strip him of his duties, and Marcus Freeman and or Mickens, whoever would take over at that point. But I don't think they're just going to boot him from the staff. I remember that happened a few years back. Notre Dame baseball, there was a pitching coach that was stripped of his duties, and one of the other assistants took it over in the middle of the season, and he was never fired for that matter. I think that might have been Dave Schrag's last year, so I'm giving it away when it happened. It's not a shock that it happened during the Dave Schrag era, but those kind of things do happen from time to time. Fill in the blank. It's blank that Notre Dame women's basketball will play the Michigan Wolverines November 15th in Detroit in the 4th annual Shamrock Classic.
I think it's great. And the reason why I think it's great is you have 2 teams so close in proximity. 2 teams that just played each other, actually, if I'm not mistaken, right? They played each other in the last NCAA tournament.
They did, right here.
So yep. I just think, when you're trying to mobilize fans and get as many, fans as possible, and you're going to kind of like a neutral site like Detroit, a team like Michigan really makes sense. So, I'm not really so caught up on who the opponent is. I just think the Shamrock Classic is a really good idea. Then you start talking about locations, and then you start talking about what team makes sense to play in that location. So I think they've check, right? You've got the Shamrock Classic, check. You've picked a good site in Detroit, check, so your fans can get there. Yeah. But it's not obviously right in your backyard. And then the third check is you're playing a team that also is going to show up and bring a lot of numbers with them. And, I know they're not in the same conference, but Notre Dame and Michigan obviously have a lot of history with each other in terms of just schools and rivalries and what they might not be direct rivals. It's still kind of that territorial rivalry at the end of the day.
Little regional rivalry kind of thing. And this came up when Michigan was here for the NCAA tournament. Hey, you're going to play Notre Dame a little bit more. And they did play. Notre Dame and Michigan played at Purcell in Niele Ivy's first season. And last year in the NCAA tournament was the first time they had played since then. So I like this. This was something that was kind of, a few years back. They were working on this. How could they do, this Shamrock Classic type thing? They played it in St. Louis, Niele Ivy's hometown, the first season. 2 year, the next year, they played against Illinois out in Washington, D.C., which was kind of a cool trip for a neutral site type game. Last year, they wanted to play USC in Brooklyn, and they were planning on playing that game the same day as the Notre Dame Army game at Yankee Stadium. But because of all of USC was already going to UConn that season, and because of their Big Ten travel and all that kind of stuff, they didn't want another big trip. So unfortunately, they weren't able to do that. They put together the home and home instead. And I think the Shamrock Classic last year ended up being the UConn game when it was at Notre Dame, so because they couldn't get like a neutral site figured out with somebody else, they just did it as a home game. So now they're going to go off to Detroit, and it'll be pretty cool because, like you said, you're going to have fans of both programs up there. You're going to play it in Detroit and kind of get out a little bit. So cool that they're keeping it going. So should be fun to be able to do that. And again, that'll be November 15th, Notre Dame and Michigan on the women's basketball hard court. So Joel Klatt said on his podcast recently, he thinks that the college football targeting penalty is terrible because it comes with the automatic ejection when a player is flagged, and also means that the player, as we see with the Don Schuler this week, is suspended for his next half of a game, which, like if you're ejected in the first half, you just get ejected for, you're suspended for the rest of the game. If you're ejected in the second half, it means you're ejected for the first half of the next game. So Klatt does not like this because of the suspension that comes with it. You buy or sell it?
I buy this actually. And I came up with, I buy the idea that the targeting is terrible. I buy that the automatic ejection is terrible. And I buy that it is a very subjective rule at this point, and we still can't get a clear, definitive, this is targeting versus not targeting. Here is the Jesse Steyer spin solution on targeting in college. I think how this should work is there should be like a warning system almost. I think that, and not even say, here's how I think about this. You get one warning in game. If you get another targeting, it's an ejection, and I don't mind the suspension the next game. However, I think if you get a warning in a game, you should get like another, and that's your only one. You should get another warning in the next game. And then as they compile up through the season, like your fifth one becomes an ejection, basically. Like, so if you're not
like a flagrant foul system like they have in the NBA is what you're saying.
Exactly. You get suspended after so many flagrant fouls. You get a suspension or an ejection after so many targeting penalties throughout the accumulation of the season, right? Because you can't just let guys off the hook and let them be headhunters every game. But if you get two same game, then yeah, I think you should get an ejection. But let's say a Don Schuler got one against Texas A&M, then he gets one against Purdue, and then maybe he gets one against USC. Then I think you could start talking about ejection at that point. I think you should basically get like a couple mulligans or yellow cards before you get your final red card at the end of the day.
Yeah, that would be an interesting way of doing it. So basically what you're saying, you build them up and then you have to sit for an entire game rather than, like wherever you're at in one half and then the next half.
Yeah. And then once you reach, let's say like 5 targetings on the season, then everyone after that is ejection. Like you don't get any more warnings after that. You know what I mean? Like you should get a bank of warnings before you just get the ejection boot.
I think, my thing has always been just, if you do it one time in a game, it's just your common personal foul. It's a 15-yard penalty, which really it should be anyway. They're not ejecting people in NFL games for, it's not even called targeting in an NFL game, but you can't hit up around the shoulders and helmet, like up above the shoulders and neck area. It's just a personal foul, which is what this should be. I think the ejection goes too far because there is subjectivity involved in it. There are plenty of people there are plenty of people, obviously, just like who are talking in the YouTube chat right now, who don't think that a Don Schuler's hit should have been targeting. It was very close. He did tackle with his helmet up around the head and shoulders area, which is why he was ultimately ejected. I just think it should be a 15-yard penalty the first time you do it. If you do it a second time in the same game, then it's an ejection.
So we agree on that. 2-1
Yeah.
games should get you ejected, but not the first one.
Exactly. I just think it's too steep when there's just so much still gray area about what is.
Well, not only is it a gray area, but you have 2 top 10 teams and you're playing high speed, like that's the hardest thing to take in consideration. Like you're playing at such a high speed and so much stakes on the line, and you're trying to recover and, make up steps in the secondary or maybe force a turnover. It's just like at the end of the day, no one is, and I will say this with a caveat, like 90% of guys aren't looking to target, like I think it's obvious when there's clear intent when someone's trying to take a head off.
Right. All right. So we've got some differing opinions on this. I am Tenzin. I am the son of Ang. And the YouTube chat says Botello ejected for hitting someone's hip. Torrey Hunter Jr. got concussed and missed multiple.
That was against Texas, right?
Yep. They still don't know how to call it. The Botello thing, he tackled with the crown of his helmet. That's why he was ejected. It wasn't where he hit him. You can't tackle with the crown of your helmet no matter where. So to ace 454 ND's point, he says he doesn't agree you can seriously hurt someone with a bad hit. However, the rules for targeting need to be crystal clear. The refs need universal training, and it needs to be reviewed. It is reviewed, and that, whatever the call is on the field, or even if the call is not made on the field, they go to review. It has to be reviewed to determine if it is, but there's still the subjectivity of whoever the person is in the replay booth as to whether or not they think it is. Yeah, I do agree. You can seriously hurt someone with a bad hit, including yourself, which is why they don't want people tackling with the crown of their helmets. But that's why, as I am Tenson is saying, they miss it all the time. Then yes, I agree. They miss it all the time. And he says, then where's the offensive targeting? Because there are plenty of guys on offense who have done the same kind of things, and it's not being called. And that's why I don't think there should be an ejection for it. It should just be a personal foul, at least, if you're going to keep the ejection, it should be just a personal foul for the first offense in a game, second offense, then your ejection. I don't completely disagree with Jesse's point system either. Like if it's because the whole
you're then a notorious targeter at that point.
Right. The whole purpose.
It's not just a one-off situation.
Right. The whole purpose of this thing is to dissuade people from doing it again. So, yes. Jesse, is Dolphins head coach Mike McDaniel done if Miami gets hammered by Buffalo tonight?
If they lose 40-7, he's not taking that flight back home.
That's it.
You can't, they've looked horrible. And
I know.
I think the way that you should phrase this question, to be honest with you, is Mike McDaniel and Tua done, because Tua is a Mike McDaniel product. And this whole offense was built around him. I don't think anyone else is going to give Tua another shot like McDaniel has during his tenure with the Dolphins. So I think I think there's a lot on the line for both Tua and McDaniel. If Tua wants to be an NFL quarterback and continue to be a starting NFL quarterback, there's a lot of pressure on him tonight to at least play well. Because if they both get hammered, I think both of their time as being an NFL head coach and an NFL starting quarterback, that their time is up. And Bobby's going to hammer me in the chat. That is one of my favorite coaches. A lot is just falling apart around him. I think he's great, great motivator, a great, schematic guy, but there's just a lot of injuries and bad defense and a lot going wrong.
The defense has gotten worse with each year. A couple of years ago, they were a pretty good defense, but they've lost some guys from the defensive line, some injuries from the defensive line from when they were a playoff team a couple of years ago. But the biggest indictment, kind of like you said, they're tied together. And it used to be, like Tua's had the injuries, and they were at least a serviceable team as long as Tua was healthy. But like last year, the year before, when Tua was out, everything would just fall apart. Like the offense could not function without him. Like Devon Achane was one of the best running backs in the NFL as long as Tua was there. As soon as Tua was out, Achane was useless. But now the problem is you've got both of those guys and you just look bad. It is just not a good offense. They scored a little bit more against the Patriots last week. I don't know what that means, but like I feel like you've at least got to be very competitive with Buffalo tonight, or the end is coming pretty quickly, I think, for Mike McDaniel.
That's why I'm so tempted to bet on Miami to cover the spread tonight. A lot rides on this game.
When the chips are down and the odds
divisional,
are up.
It's a Thursday night, short week. You got, your head coach and quarterback or jobs are on the line. I don't know.
Bobby O'Shea in the YouTube chat, he says, "Oh, I know. I write everything down in my IB journal." He is keeping tabs on everything, everywhere. All right. Jesse will be back for rapid fire tomorrow. There will be no whiteboard. Oh, that's right. You won't be here tomorrow. Bobby's going to be in tomorrow. What are you doing tomorrow, real quickly?
I'm going to get my marriage license.
Oh, well, congratulations. Rumor has it he's getting married very soon. All right. Good stuff. Thanks, Jesse. I will talk to you later, and we will be back, of course, tomorrow. We do have that Thursday night game coming up here in just a little bit. We'll talk to you tomorrow. Budweiser's Weekday Sports Beat with IrishBreakdown.com.